Alright, this is Lord Nitro 101 back at you once again. So, long-awaited video of the two-handed build. As a lot of people have named it a lot of different things, I'm going to name it the Fists of the Flying Dragon because it is one of the primary weapons to make this thing work. Alright, so let me jump right into the game here. Alright, so basically, how you start out with this build is it is very important to acquire the Sanwuku's pieces, but it's not necessary to start out with that in the build. Okay, to give you a prime example, when I first acquired the pieces, I did have the Flying Dragon initially, so basically, I will try out a couple different things in case you cannot acquire the Flying Dragon to begin with. Alright, so basically what ended up happening was I ended up having the Flying Dragon. I managed to find all of the pieces of the Sanwuku set other than the helm. Okay, so one of the key components here was to acquire these pieces. Ideally, you would want the Sanwuku gloves, shoulders, and helm. And then you could use the amulet for a much more DPS or defensive or clone amulets. But I'll explain that as I go further along. Alright, so basically, several people on the stream had asked me, could you play this build with lesser gear? Or if you couldn't have found it. Okay, so basically what I thought I would do is I would show you where I started from. Okay, so key components to start out with. We'll take off the Flying Dragon for the moment. Alright, ideally you'd want to start out with a very important thing. Make sure you have a Ring of Grandeur. Okay. The DPS ring can be, in this case I'm using a Signet ring. It can be a Unity, it can be an SOJ, it can be a good DPS ring. But you will, however, have to roll a socket on it. Alright, so ideally just same things. In order to put the gems in there to make this build more effective, you require to make sure that you can roll sockets on both your rings and your amulet. Okay, so from here, let's just start out. Ideally, you want to craft the All Guilds chest. Make sure that you get a high dex roll, a light, and an armor roll. Very important to get a secondary resist on it. Okay, very important. I got very fortunate with the roll here that I was able to pick up a resist and health globes, so that's very helpful. Second piece to it is the All Guilds search or bracers. Ideally you want to roll these things until you get holy skills. In this particular case I only got 15, but they do go up to 20. Try to get a good dex roll, a good fight roll. Try to get a perfect 6 on the crit chance, and try to get a secondary resist just to add for your all resist. Okay, so ideally, when I started putting the set together, I had acquired the Sanwuku gloves, the shoulders, and the amulet. I do have the helms, but I was not able to find a decent one. I'll link you the current one I have right now. It's not the best, it's not bad, but it needed to have a much better roll. On the Sanwuku helm, you would be looking for a dex, light, some kind of secondary that would aid you, and of course the crit chance on it and an open socket. I've yet to acquire one that's good enough that I would replace the helm I'm currently using. Alright, so that would be one of the replacements. Okay, so ideally, when I had acquired these sets, I managed to find the pieces for the Sanwuku. Okay. And this helm is just beneficial to me because it has a reduced to resource cost on it. So it makes it a little bit beneficial for me based off the build that I'm playing. Alright, so when I acquired the pieces, and it took me a long time, but I could not acquire the Depth Diggers, which has a primary skills, generates resource, deal 94% additional damage. So I got a decent roll on there. Ideally for the Depth Diggers, you want a high dex roll, a Vite roll, either the all resist roll or the armor roll, and double sockets. Alright, and try to get that primary somewhere into the high 80s and into the 90s. The second piece, where you've seen my clones wandering around, this allows you, if you acquire the crudest boots, one of the new fixes they added was your Mystic ally summons 2 Mystic allies that fight by your side. So that's why you see 2 of them running around when I've been on this stream. Okay, so ideally I could not find these 2 pieces. So I had to, however, find a much better combination. So I ended up going with the Crimson pants and the Crimson boots. And if you look at it, because you have the Ring of Grandeur, alright, the 2-piece, right, helps regenerate 2,000 life per spirit. It also reduces your cooldown skills by 10%. Because you have the Ring of Grandeur, you gain an extra 50 resist all, and again it reduces your resource cost by 10%. So your cooldowns and your resource are both dropping down by 10% each. So that's pretty critical if you're able to start out with just those 2 pieces. It does make the build very effective. So it's one of those things that you can start out with if you find you have a problem acquiring, the pants and the boots. So what I'll do is I'll show you where I initially had started with. So I will take the gems out of here. Alright. And I will place them in my old captains. Okay. So this is where I was before. Now if I go into combat, we'll just jump to somewhere quickly. We'll go to, say, the Festering Woods. Now if you go into combat, and I will explain the combat mechanics. I'm just in Torment 4 right now. Obviously you guys have all seen me take the set much higher, but it's just to give you a good example. As you can tell, it goes through it pretty easily, based off just the way it actually goes. Oh, and I managed to get a legendary. See, that streamer buff for those people that know me. Even when I'm doing a video, I still require, gotta find those legendaries. Alright, so just let me finish off this final elite here. There we go. So I'll teleport back to town. So basically what ended up happening was several people had asked me, could you play this set if you could not acquire some of the other pieces? So I said, okay, I believe you could. So what I will do is, if you have acquired some of the inner pieces, I will put the chest on, the pair of pants, and I'll put the helmet on. Okay, I do have the belt, so if you can acquire the witching hour, they are very hard to come by. You can definitely go with the Inna's flavor, which is the belt. Alright, and it does definitely has less DPS, but definitely more toughness. Alright, so if you look, it didn't really change my damage number much. It didn't really change my toughness. But if you look, I have acquired all of the Inna's set bonus. Alright, so we will go back out to the same area again, wearing the Inna's set this time. And we'll see if we can't find ourselves an elite pack. Probably just trash mobs, but this will give you a good example. Alright, we'll go into, do believe this is the Warrior's Rest. Alright, so wearing the Innas, I think it probably will give you a lot more defensive stance. But as you can tell on, Torment 4, I'm still going through the stuff really, really quickly. Alright, so there you go. That is with the Innis set on. Now, a lot of people had asked me whether or not you could play this build if you could not have acquired the Flying Dragon to actually complete this set. And I gave it some thought, and I did have a couple of the Diablos that I could give you an example. So I will leave the Innis set on. I will put the Balance on, which is one of the Diablos that actually have attack speed rolled onto them. So I will equip that, and I will, of course, you watch my damage has gone down. My gem is a little bit higher in my Flying Dragon, but just to give you an example. We will jump into the Festering Woods once again. And see if we can't find ourselves another elite pack. I'll go down to the other cave that's down here. Gotta grab that gold. Gold, very important. Alright, so right now you see me. I am in Torment 4, not using the Flying Dragon. I'm using a Balance right now with a lesser gem. Just to prove a point that you don't necessarily need the Flying Dragon in order to farm higher torment levels in this build. So just let me get up against the elite pack here. Alright, here's our elite pack. Alright, so as you can tell, and that is playing this build without the Flying Dragon and the Innis set on. So it can be effective that way as well. So what I'll do is I'll change it around one more time. Say for example you're not able to acquire the Innis set, for example. So what we can do is we will pull off the Innis set. I will put the All Guild set back on. Okay. I'll put the Captain set back on. Alright. And I'll put my helm back on. So now I'm wearing almost all the stuff that you could be crafted. You could, however, craft the shoulders if you can't seem to find them. But ideally, this build really relies on the Sun Wukong set in whichever numeric order that you have, whether it's the gloves, shoulders, helm, or amulet. Okay, now I will go again. Though my DPS dropped down, my toughness is about the same. I'm now wearing almost all crafted gear, other than my witching hour, which could be replaced with any belt that allows you to have attack speed on it. So, like the Razor Strap. There are several other belts that will allow you to have some kind of an attack speed on there. So what you would want ideally is a high dex, light attack speed roll, and some kind of secondary resist for you. Alright, so now I'm wearing almost all of the crafted gear that I was wearing before. But I will go in with the Balance, okay, which is not the Flying Dragon, with a lesser gem. And we will try to find ourselves an elite pack really, really quickly. here is, oh, it's just a chin. Alright, so as you can tell, it is, ideally, yes, the Blind Dragon is important for this build because of what its secondary affix does for you, but it's not necessary. Okay? Um, so let's just I'll quickly clear off all of this. And we'll go to town. Alright, so like I said, it can be acquired that way. Now, ideally, what I'll do is I'll put the skills up for you, which are the best skills to be running for this particular build. Basically, what it does is you're trying to find and get the best out of all of the gear that you have. So we use Sixth Sense to reduce all physical damage taken by 25%. So that means any kind of physical contact that you have, impact or non-impact, is reduced by 25%. And because majority of the time, if you noticed, I had to get right in to where all the monsters were in order to kill them. The next skill is basically one of the more popular new ones that they've added. Increases your attack speed of spirit generators by 15%. That's pretty dramatic. To allow us to gain a little bit more protection, we use Seize of the Initiative. Dealing damage to enemies above 25% health increases your attack speed by 30% for 4 seconds. And seeing how that this build is all about attacking as quickly as possible, very important. Harmony is, however, one of the new skills where they replaced one of everything and now turned it into harmony. And we just had this increase before. It was 30%, and now they've increased it to 40%. So 40% of your single elemental resist from items, instead increasing your resist to all elements. So it takes 40% of your highest and divides it out to 40% each. Alright, so the build itself, we have 100 fists. This particular one, the reason why we're using Fist of Fury, because it is holy damage. Ideally, this build is most effective when you have holy elementals assigned to some of your gear. Second one, as well as holy damage as well, is Sweeping Wind, Inner Storm. Right, surround yourself in a holy vortex for 6 seconds. It damages nearby enemies. Critical hits intensifies the vortex. Alright, so empathy. Ideally, I use this when you really, really need to regenerate as much as you can, as quickly as you can. So, ideally, I wasn't a huge fan of empathy in a lot of my other builds, but for this one in particular, it can really keep you alive in those very, very difficult packs, especially in higher torment levels or higher greater rifts when you're surrounded by multiple packs. Alright, our brand new one, Mantra of Salvation, which was Mantra of Evasion, they changed this skill where it ideally was a dodge before. And this one here is one of the more popular ones, called Agility. And it's one of those ones that it actually increases your all resist, and for you and your allies that are really close. So very, very good skill. Alright, so basically, ideally how it works is I will put, so right now, just to prove that the balance is there, that can be utilized. So if I put my other set back on, alright, so basically how this build works is you are allowing yourself to get into an enemy. Okay, we'll quickly jump to just the Festering Woods and see if I can find something quickly. Alright, so there's a whole bunch of skeletons up here. So what you want to do is you want to proc your Sweeping Wind so it's going. Okay? If you're in danger, you would proc your Empathy in order to keep yourself alive. And ideally, once your Sweeping Wind is going, you want to make sure you basically spam the mantra to keep you protected while you're in combat, and it'll constantly raise your all resist. Right, so there. I mean, like I said, it's a very, very simple build, but it's very, very difficult to acquire the right kind of pieces. Now, as for the gems, the legendary gems that have most people have been putting in the same ones that I have. We're using the Pain Enforcer. Critical hits cause enemy to bleed for, in my case, I have rank 14, is 1600 weapon damage is physical over 3 seconds. The second gem is the Teardrop Star Weaver, which is the Smite gem. And in this case, I have it rank 17, which is 2680% weapon damage is holy, which is proccing off of my holy skills damage from my bracers. The other one that I have in my amulet is the Swiftness gem, which is at this point it's only rank 15, 65% chance to hit to gain swiftness, increasing your attack speed by 1% for 4 seconds, and this can stack up to 15 times. So these are very, very good gems for this particular build. Like I said, if there's any more questions, I will definitely update this as I go along. But like I said, it is a very viable build. A lot of people have come into my stream and saying, why are so many people playing a two-handed build? My response to that is, for a long time, we were never able to play a two-handed build because A, the two-handeds were too weak. So the last sort of build that we were actually able to play that was a two-handed build was a build way back in D3 Vanilla called Nirvana. And it was an ability to utilize a two-handed weapon and spam bells. So it's for us in particular that have been playing a long time, I find it refreshing to actually play a build with a two-handed weapon, and find the right kind of pieces to assemble to take the best advantage of having a two-handed weapon. Alright, so that ends this video, guys. I do apologize that it took a long time for me to actually get it up and active. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to drop by my stream. I will put the link down below, as well as I will put the Diablo link calculator, which will actually show you each one of the skill tree, so you can review it for yourself. Thank you very much for tuning in, and this is it for me.